Friends of Latin America, hello. My name is Alfredo Huertas and I am an optometrist. And I am in the city of Medellin for about 24 years. And we have here an institute specialized in contact lenses where we attend special cases of contact lenses. I want to thank Contamac for the invitation that has given to me, as well as the Mediphacos company, as they have suggested to me to do a workshop on their new SG scleral lens, which has been designed about 2 years ago. Mediphacos seeks to reach all of you in Latin America to distribute this lens, which is a very customizable lens. Here you can see the Mediphacos headquarters in Belo Horizonte, Brazil, where the laboratory and all the areas of the transnational company are located, such as the research and development, the marketing, and other areas. The SG scleral lens is a new development that changed all the previous designs of Mediphacos scleral lenses, which were developed in 2016. These were of multi-curved design, and the new SG lens has great versatility. The flexibility of its design offers more comfort and less anoxia to the patient. Their diameters are now also smaller. Why is it called SG? Because it is the second generation, and you can see that the lens has different curves, with 5 customizable zones from the central zone all the way to the edge. Here, I want to show you how the Mediphacos mission, which is Vision in Evolution, evolves. In these 2 videos, on the left is the scleral lens, which is a multi-curve lens with large diameters, which had some problems on the corneas of some patients. And on the right, as you can see, is the new SG lens, which has some good advantages. As you can see, the impression of the different curves. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 with the edge on the lens. And they are visible in the lens as it facilitates the observation in the slit lamp with photos and videos which can perform the adaptation, which makes it then a highly customizable lens. But how is the design and the autonomy of the lens? It is pleasant to tell you, colleagues, that we are facing a highly customizable lens. And so we have a lens for each case. You will find 5 zones: a central, intermediate, limbar, scleral support, and at the end of the edge of the lens. Now let's see how we can customize this lens. If you look at the arrow, the central zone, I can increase and decrease the subject 200 to 300 microns. And we can do it in the intermediate zone with fewer microns. I can handle plus 200 and minus 100. I can still go over the limbar zone with more than 200 microns. There is something very innovative about the lens, and it is the scleral support. I can do it by calculating the support angle. Studies have shown that the landing of the lens in the sclera must be smooth, parallel, with an excellent edge, which can calculate from -3 to +3. they will be able to observe with a good slit lamp, as the lens can be customized. Here we have the test box that comes with a laminated manual book type binding. You can see here that it is divided into 3 groups. We have first a group with a 15.7 diameter lens. The second with 16.2 diameters, and it is worth noting that between groups 1 and 2, we have a way to correct 70 or 80% of the cases of corneal irregularity or corneal ectasias that we could handle. In the third group, we can see some lenses that we call the T44, T50 and T56. These lenses have a posterior toric periphery. That toric periphery helps us manage scleral asymmetry. In this way, when using symmetric lenses, and these are off-center, we can use T44 lenses when we find the curvatures up to 44 diopters, from 44 above the T50. If ectasia is higher, we would use the T56. With the SG scleral lens, we can have a customization which is done in 6 simple steps. Now you know the indications of scleral lenses, or in extreme ectasias, patients who do not tolerate RGP lenses, or alterations in ocular surfaces. In short, all this is known to us in different congresses. And today, we can have patients with intraocular lenses who want to improve their vision. Now, what's better than the comfort of a scleral lens? But how do we choose this starting lens, you might ask? I invite you to perform an exercise with your keratoconus patients that have ectasias. And it is to visualize the profiles of these patients, and you can compare those profiles with the scleral lenses of your test box. But it is an empirical way to do it, and I have personally done it, and with practice, we can relate profiles and the Saggites. It is a way of knowing the first lens to place in our patients. And this is a workshop, and we want that from virtuality that we can teach, give tools, and clinical experience for you to use in your office. So here I present the profile of our patient. It is a case of an advanced keratoconus that has had a CXL with a fairly good tissue without any type of surgery. And so we are going to start with the adaptation, showing step by step the 6 adaptation stages of the SG sclera lens. So you will understand what to do in the adaptation with the findings that we found in the adaptation. Another way to find the initial lens is with topographic analysis. You can see here in the enlargement of the images that this patient in the left eye has a Kmax of 77 diopters. Best fit sphere is 5.41 millimeters on the Zernick map. which lets us know the visual quality of the patient's RMS, which is 451 microns. I like to visualize these maps because they give me a clear idea of the state of the cornea. The refractive map lets me know the maximum K and the BFS. In the holiday map, we can appreciate the location of the ectasia with the tangential map, as well as the thickness of the cornea. And I advise you to make use of the map of Bellin-Ambrosio Enhanced to follow up on ectasia and at any time to be able to give or make a referral with the corneal specialist. The Zernick map relates to me the visual acuity and the visual quality, those who have adapted the scleral lenses and those who intend to do so, that find that the visual acuity achieved with a scleral lens is sometimes not ideal. And so the Zernick map helps us to explain to the patient about the expectations he has regarding his vision, using the RMS for this purpose. I usually document my cases, and here you can see the test that I performed in 2016 with a scleral lens, which was a multi-curve lens. Now, please appreciate that the lens has a BC of 6.75, of -8 a day, and 18.2. Now, note that the current lens, the SG, has a smaller lens in the entire test box. With this, we are improving the coverage of the corneal surface. Now, as we see, with the SG, it is less. Observing the video, we saw a central touch of around 250 microns. When comparing with the thickness of the cornea, we also observe that the lens does not have limbar clearance from 9 to 3. And note that at the moment, this lens, in the test, we had to make some changes, which will in the end improve the sagitta and the limbar area. Starting with the adaptation, we are going to insert a new SG lens. We will change the old sclera for the SG sclera. In the insertion, I prefer to do it manually with my fingers, so that I always know the pressure that I am exerting when placing the lens. My assistants will also teach our patients in the same way. With our fingers, we make a tripod to place the lens. We have found in some patients, with the use of insertion cups, which are used for insertion, they placed the lens with a lot of pressure. We see what happened with the SG sclera lens that we just placed. We are going to make some observations in the video that we will write as a finding on the next slide. It is a number 18 lens from the test box with the characteristics that you can see in the video. And we can see that there is a central touch. Also, at the limbar level, it improved a lot with respect to the old scleral lens. We are going to return to the video again so that we can appreciate how in the limbar area from 3 to 9 less touch is seen. Another finding the lens has a lower temporal displacement. Now observe that there is a touch of at least 200 microns, and if we compare the clearance to the cornea, and it will take about 150 microns to free it on the cornea. Now, what findings did we have? A central touch of at least 200 microns to be placed parallel to the cornea, a touch in both the nasal and temporal limbar area, and a decentration of the inferior temporal lens, and a scleral support and edge that we did not evaluate at any time. What solution are we going to give you? Well, we have the posterior toric SG lenses, and we will do a test, and we will lift the sagitt, perform a limbar clearance, and we will evaluate the scleral support and the support to the edge. Now let's go back to the case, and we are going to use a trial lens, which we call T50, that has a peripheral lift of 250 microns per meridian in periphery, 6.75 base curve, a power of -8, and a diameter of 15.7. And so let's watch the video and look at the findings. As you can see, there is a bubble, and of the lifting of the lens, despite having a good peripheral toric level, notice that the movement I make to the lens, to the center, it has a central touch which appears. I see the touch of the ectasia, and there you can see it. So this lens, I must modify the quadrants when I place the order. These are observations that are made within the adaptation, and it is necessary to leave the patient with the lens for at least 2 hours to observe these findings. Let's review a little. The clearance of the central area of the lens with the cornea is done by comparing the thickness of the cornea and the clearance. Now usually the scleral contact lenses have thicknesses between 0.3, 0.35 and 0.4 millimeters. And it is a value that helps, in comparison, the search for clearance. Now if we look for a physiological lens that does not alter the corneal metabolism, we have already carried out the first step. And this second step is the liberation of the intermediate zone of the cornea, in which we seek to personalize the clearance. Observe the left image of the T50 lens. You can see that the fluorescein reaches a part of the sclera and then crosses the limbar area. If we see the image on the right, we see a small central zone that when moving the lens disappears, thus improving the position of the lens. Now we see that the border does not have fluorescein, but if we observe the intermediate zone, we can then see that there is a central touch that if we move or center it, we can improve the adaptation. And so the theme of the clearance is the personalization in the sclera, which is to also increase the microns to then improve the condition of the lens. Let's see the third step, which is the limbar clearance. Now if you remember that in the video we passed of the T50 lens, we saw that by centering the lens with your finger, the limbar area between 120 to 180 degrees And so we can then see that if we improve these quadrants, we will have improved the limbar clearance, which we would lift the central area to find the ideal lens with the right clearance when we are making an adaptation. If we remember some types of situations when we are making a contact lens adaptation, this type of situation should not happen. And if we appreciate the arrow and then see that the dark area from 0 degrees to 135 degrees in the limbar area, there is a touch, and in the other quadrant, from about 300 degrees to 360 degrees, there is a touch. This situation cannot exist. Now, if you look in the image below, the same case is occurring, but with more hours of use, we see another touch. And so in this right here is a case of keratoplasty. The sagitta of the lens must be improved to avoid these touches. In the following image, the bubble appears that should not appear. Below is a dimple veiling, and it happened to us in one case after 2 months of use. Now let us remember that areas where there is a corneal anoxia that can cause injury and metabolic alterations to the design of the lens, which must be improved. The slide that you see here above corresponds to the touch that you see here below. There should be no touches, however, and we must always go over the cornea. And the corneal tissue cannot be injured in this case either. Now we will talk about the 4th step, which is the scleral support. There are various studies, such as the one that you can appreciate by Van der Waal and his collaborators, how they found the angles that change from the limbar area to the scleral area that produce tangential convex profiles, where the temporal curvature it is greater than the nasal, and it is a combination of changes between these 2 areas. And the reason why we have differences in the peripheries on the lenses and on the limbar and the scleral area.
Las zonas nasales, son un poco más planas, lo cual lleva a que tengamos diferencias en las periferias de las lentes, diferencias en los apoyos de la zona limbar y escleral.
For this reason, it is important that we must be very attentive to the lenses that we use, and it is also important to know what designs and determine what designs that we work with. The SG scleral lens has designed a scleral support, which is based on a support angle. The test box pattern is 54 degrees, and when the variation is made at 56 and maximum 60, I am further from the sclera. And so, do not forget that the support is given in degrees, which I think is fantastic, but those degrees are handled by the laboratory at microns, and thus we will have the opportunity to have control over that characteristic. Continuing with the presentation of our case, in the 4th step as we see here, where we are evaluating the scleral support, and we observe in different meridians of our trial lens that fluorescein only reaches a certain part of the scleral, not close to the edge. Now, what should we do when placing the order? We simply have to change the standard angle, which is 54 degrees, and we must increase it to 56 or 57 degrees, which helps the fluorescein spread further to the edge, which is very ideal in this case. The fifth step, which is edge lifting. There must be a perfect landing, and we must try to make the lens land in a homogeneous way, so that the sclera lens brings in its designs a positive edge distance and negative approaches. Now, as you can see, these positives raise the edge and the negatives close it towards the sclera. And so, it is a method with which we use the fluorescein to see when they close and when they rise. Now let us observe here a case of the perfect landing, and we will enlarge the images a little, and we can appreciate that there is no entrapment of vessels within the limbar area. And also there is no marked adjustment that leads to a blanching of the scleral surface. This is what you should look for when fitting the contact lens. You should be looking that there should be no bleaching or no whitening. What should we see? These are undesirable landings, as you see. Now if we enlarge the images, you will be able to appreciate, in this case, the changes in the glass. In this, we can see a conjunctival collapse, which is due to the excess adjustment in the scleral border. Here we also have a pterygium that the lens with its edge produces a redness. Now, in many occasions, if we do an OCT, we can see how the lens is buried in the sclera. We can also appreciate the design of the lens, and in this case, it is not the most suitable to land on the sclera. Edge lifting. Let's use the same slide and look at the edges. You can see that they are in a good position here, and they are in a good condition. But if we put a bit more fluorescein on the edge, we can have an edge lift which generates comfortability for the patient. And so if we want to improve, we must change the edge. The next step is over-refraction, which is realistically very simple. It is about making a good subjective controlling accommodation. But I want to take advantage of this space of over-refraction to reveal some situations from experience that are very important. One of them is to compare visual acuity and visual quality. And so remember, from the first slides, I tried the Zernike map, and it helps to compare visual quality with the VA. Sometimes we can feel dissatisfied with the visual acuity obtained with the lens, but the patient, in terms of visual quality, can feel very happy, and we can read it on the Zernike map with the decrease in RMS. Another important factor is the shrinkage of this lens. We must remember that centered optical systems have a better resolution and in total have a higher performance. The greater the centering, the lower the clearance. And so the patient will have better comfort with the VA and less corneal anoxia. And so, remember that this centering is fundamental. When we have less clearance, the patient will then have better visual acuity, which will lead to better comfort. It is important to monitor the endothelial count year after year when the patient goes to their consultation. And when using scleral lenses, it is mandatory in those patients, even with refractive surgeries or keroplasties or etc. We should try to not be quote-unquote heroes, but also achieving visual acuity, and that at any moment there is a corneal decompensation. There is a point that I want to address here, and it is the number of hours for the contact lens test for the patient to have. Usually, the laboratory suggests 2 hours, and really what we are measuring is the scleral resistance. But how do we do it? And this is a case of radio keratotomy, and I usually do it with photos and videos. Now I want to show you this video, and we are going to place the 2 videos. The one on the left is the lens placed at 9 AM, and the one on the right is 5 hours later.
Ustedes ahora van a apreciar aquí 5 horas después qué pasó.
And so there we can understand that there are different scleral resistances, and it is necessary to take them into account, because this lens, after 5 hours, under and approached the cornea, and the second video shows us that we must calculate a different lens. This is why I wanted to share this experience with you, since the case of over-refraction is short to explain. Now let's talk about the customization options for the SG scleral lens. The first one, in the posterior toric periphery, and when I tell you about the test box, I let you know these 3 lenses that you can see in this presentation. It is part of group 3, and if you look at it here, it comes in diameter of 15.7 in different Sagites. But their difference is in the haptics on the periphery, and they can be 3 levels. Level 1 is 150 microns, level 2 250, and level 3 350. And we can also carry it by diopters, which is level 1 1 diopter, level 2 2 diopters, and level 3 3 diopters. Now if we see the following video with the horizontal marks, it is the differential characteristic that the lens is part of group 3. And here you can see in T56 level 2, you can see that it has the marks that the lens brings. You can see that this is the first customization option of the SG lens. What are the brands that bring these lenses when we are going to do the customization? Depending on the case, it is a peripheral posterior, or if we are going to perform an astigmatism correction to the front area of the lens, or a combination of the 2. And here you can see them. They place us in the use of observation in the slit lamp. Here you can see, when we continue with our clinical case in this video, and if you remember, we first did a test with the number 18 without a toric posterior periphery, where we observed a central touch with limbal touch from 0 to 180 degrees. But now let's see the video with the toric
podemos
level
observar que
T50
disminuyó el
lens.
toque. Sigue nuestra famosa burbuja allí, pero miren cómo disminuyó el toque.
Observe how the touch decreases and the centering improves by just changing to toric posterior peripheral.
Altamente customizables o altamente personalizables. Entonces, mire, la lente
Likewise, there is still a lower temporal decentration. Now, if you observe how I close the beam of the slit lamp and place it at the 60 degrees angle, I can see the mark of the posterior toric lens. If you observe, if we want to place the astigmatism, we already have the angle of the rotation of the lens in its most curved axis. For the calculation of the exact value of the final astigmatism to be included in the lens, it is enough to indicate to the laboratory this angle plus the astigmatism of the over-refraction, and then the laboratory makes the final calculation. And so, when do we have to work frontal toricity, which we must observe various situations? First, there is the posterior toricity. It must be organized. Secondly, is to evaluate the lens that does not flex, that can give me residual astigmatism and low visual acuity. Or also, there may be residual astigmatism. In my practice, I observe them quite a bit in keratoconus, even up to 2 or 2.5 diopters. And so, you do not forget to inform the laboratory of the astigmatism value and the lens turn in the laboratory order. Again, I want to show you these marks of the customization options that can be changed as you see them in the slide. I want to show you in the following video the calculation of the most curved axis, and that value is the one that must be sent to the laboratory, with the value of the over-refraction astigmatism, which in this case, it will be 45 degrees.
El desplazamiento del haz que lo debo mandar al laboratorio junto con el valor refractivo del astigmatismo, y el laboratorio ya se encarga de calcular exactamente el astigmatismo frontal que debe ir en la lente.
And so the lab calculates the frontal astigmatism to include in the lens. But when is it indicated? When there are pingueculae, pterygiums, and then it is necessary to do some elevation by sectors. Mediphacos, with the SG scleral lens, has developed that you can do by sectors in terms of degrees, which is maximum 40 degrees, as you can see. You can do it in the order from indicating where they should be done. And so these evaluations will better locate the lens against these pathologies and irregularities that may present redness or even some whitening. Now we enter the fourth customization phase, and it is the control by quadrant. This is a very important factor in the adaptation process, as the studies have shown that the lenses that we adapt today, 70 or 80% are asymmetric. From my practice, realistically, the vast majority of lenses that I adapt today are asymmetrical in their periphery. It is the best way to center the lens to improve visual acuity and clearance. And so the SG scleral lens gives you the opportunity to control the quadrants.
Las diferentes letras que usted vaya a adaptar.
The fifth customization option is the reverse geometry. It is indicated in patients who have had surgeries such as LASIK and radiokeratotomy, etc. And so simply what we are going to do is we are going to implement a change in the intermediate area of the lens, which will then be modifying the sagittal height for the lens. We can take the optical zone to more than 300 microns, all the way up to minus 100. And so, in this slide, you can see a lens that is adapted in our institute. Next to it, you can see what the manual brings. Note that the silhouette of the lens is a very flat sigmoid. And so, with the SG lens, you can customize this type of case that you can see. Here you can see the order of our patient. We are going to do an expanded tour of this. We can observe that we increase the sagitt to plus 250 microns. The final lens ends with a power of minus 6 and a diameter of 16.2. The toric level is 2, which are 250 microns. The edge, we changed it to minus 1, and the support angle, we changed it to 57 degrees. Additionally, when I showed them the video of the test lens, when I raised the lens with my finger, the lens then was centered and a central touch appeared. Now that touch made me raise the sagitt 250 microns. And you can see this here in this zone. In the area between 10 and 90 degrees, I determined to lower that quadrant by 150 microns to avoid the appearance of debris that was already being perceived in the video. Then we did the removal of the lens. Now normally I do it with my fingers, but if I manage to do it, it means that is not adjusted. And if I use the liner, it makes me think that the lens is also adjusted, but as we see the video, how the lens is extracted with my fingers. This is the test lens. And the patient does not then collaborate, and it is then easy to take it out. Another observation I make after the lens removal is that I stain the lens with fluorescein, and then I take photos and videos to observe the seals left by the lens during the test. And so, the Mediphacos workshop ends here. I hope that from virtuality, it has been clear and understandable for our colleagues who are observing it. I invite you to our beautiful Medellin. On the right, you can see the Botero Museum, which is one of our world-renowned paisas, artists' insignia. This is the old government of Antiquoya, and you can also see the subway viaduct when it goes through the center of the city. Hopefully one day they will think about Contamac there, and they will perhaps hold a class in Medellin, and we can then receive them. The people here are warm, friendly, hospitable, and we would like to be visited. Remember, it is the city of eternal spring. All year round we enjoy an excellent climate. 2 years ago we were declared the most innovative city in the world, and everyone is invited. Colleagues who have visited us have been fascinated, and so we look forward to seeing you again. The headquarters of Mediphacos invite you to follow us on social networks, and something very important, that in mediphacos.com there is a help desk, and there you can take courses on how to adapt our lenses. And I want to thank you for your attention, as well as the companies for these minutes, where I hope I have brought you messages from the clinical part of our side. The SG scleral lens is already in all of Latin America, and you can contact its authorized distributors. They have personnel that can help you with the technical part, and it guarantees and everything you require. Thank you very much, and see you next time.